see you.
Avatar: Fire and Ash is now streaming on Disney+. It's the film critics are calling the best Avatar yet.
Yeah! Go, 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 go!
A true epic and completely jaw-dropping.
This is the only pure thing in this world.
Return to Pandora on Disney+.
It will be an adventure for the whole fam.
And watch the Oscar-winning phenomenon at home.
This is sick!
Avatar: Fire and Ash, now streaming on Disney+. Rated PG-13.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
This region, referred to as the Island of Fury, IWNSNI, appears as a new focal point of creation. However, the exact nature of this island and its connection to the original island still need to be clarified. It may represent either a continuation of the Island of Trampling or an entirely new land created nearby. The Island of Fury and other secondary Palands likely followed the same creative processes established in the original domains. However, no records explicitly mention the Shebtu's involvement in this phase. Instead, the text introduces new place names, such as Mansion of Mystery and House of Combat, which suggest the foundation of additional sacred sites. These developments imply that the Falcon and associated deities, including Tannon, continued their creative work, spreading the sacred presence across the primeval world. The role of ancestral figures and the makers of substances. The secondary Palands also introduce a new deity, Heir, EBT, maker of substances, whose role mirrors earlier earth gods. This figure is associated with creating sacred spaces in these new domains. Although little is known about Heir-EB, the name suggests a connection to the elemental materials, IBT, used in forming the land. As an ancient god, Heir-EBT likely served a similar function to Tannon, or the Earthmaker, anchoring the new Palands in the same traditions that defined the original domains. The narrative described the BWTPY, first place, on the Island of Fury, a location associated with the maker of substances and considered the most sacred part of the land. This site likely represented the decayed remnants of a former Earth god's resting place, revived through the processes of death and renewal that characterized all phases of creation in Egyptian thought. Continuity and legacy of the Atlantis homelands. The mythology of the Palands demonstrates a profound connection between creation and ancestral memory. People saw each new sacred domain as a recreation of an earlier, vanished space, ensuring continuity with the past. This process of renewal extended beyond the original Palands to include secondary regions like the Island of Fury, illustrating the expansive nature of this mythological framework. The sacred domains established in the Palands formed the foundation for historical temples. For instance, the temple at Edfu claimed to be the first built on the original land, embodying the traditions of the Falcon's sacred domain. The belief that all temples originated from these sacred lands reinforced their importance in Egyptian cosmology. In conclusion, the mythology of the Atlantis homelands offers a compelling vision of creation rooted in the cycle of death and rebirth. Divine figures such as the Shebtu, the Ka, and the maker of substances established the Palands as sacred spaces, extending the divine presence across the primeval world. This process of continuous renewal not only shaped the sacred geography of Egypt, but anchored its religious traditions in an enduring connection to the past, the first place, and the recreation of sacred domains. The narrative firmly implies that the location of an early settlement of a divine earth god became the foundation for a new sacred domain after its destruction, even though it does not describe the first place's eventual appearance or its revival process. This belief aligns with a recurring Egyptian theory. Sacred domains that survived into historical times could only originate where the creator of the earth first dwelt. The choice of such sites, steeped in ancestral significance, underscored their suitability for establishing sacred spaces. A threefold process of creation. Egyptian cosmology suggests that the earth was created in three successive phases, each representing the recreation of lands that had disappeared beneath the primeval waters. This iterative process resulted in the birth of new sacred domains, each echoing the characteristics of its predecessors. The progression began with the revival of the Earthmaker's enclosure, the Mansion of Isden, followed by the recreation of the Ka's realm, which gave rise to the first series of Palands surrounding the island of creation. The final phase brought forth additional Palands that revived the homeland of the Maker of Substances, ancestral tradition, and new sacred domains. Although the ancestral nature of a place played a central role in the development of new sacred domains, it was not the sole determinant. The narrative introduces new elements that distinguish the creation of later sacred sites from earlier ones, such as those of Wetjesetneter and Jeba. The events surrounding the first place in the Island of Fury highlight this shift. Upon the arrival of the divine company of Tannon and the Falcon, the first place faced a dire threat from the Rye Snake, a dangerous presence at the island's landing stage. This danger necessitated a new form of protection, distinct from earlier traditions. To protect the area, Tech and Seshat constructed a BWTT, place for crushing. They sanctified a company of divine beings resembling animals like falcons, lions, snakes, and bulls to serve as protectors. They divided these beings into 4 groups and positioned them around the BWTT, with the falcon at its center. This arrangement replaced earlier protective symbols, such as the protector god and Tannon's staffs, signifying a distinct evolution in safeguarding sacred spaces, victory, and the consolidation of sacred grounds. Tannon issued a decree of protection, which defeated the Rye Snake. The victorious gods then settled beside the subdued foe, signifying their conquest and liberation of the land. In Egyptian thought, settling beside someone symbolized victory over an enemy and the subsequent possession of the conquered ground. The purification of this mythical battlefield paved the way for establishing a new sacred domain. After clearing the land of its enemy, a new deity, Re, joined Tannon and the Falcon at this juncture. Re's arrival marked a significant divergence from earlier traditions, which solely created sacred domains by reviving ancestral spaces. In the secondary Palands, the foundation of sacred domains involved ancestral significance and the active conquest and purification of the land. The Falcon's role as conqueror. The secondary Palands portray the Falcon as an active leader and combatant, in contrast to the original Palands, which portrayed him as the successor of a deceased ruler. The Falcon's conquest of the ancestral land enabled the creation of new sacred domains, reflecting a more dynamic role for the deity in the mythology of the secondary Palands. Advanced sacred spaces.
This summer, soccer is here, and so are the watch parties. And Uber Eats has your game day essentials covered with 30% off orders from Aldi, Kroger, and Dollar General. Everything you need to keep your crowd happy, delivered straight to your door. Chips, dips, fresh ingredients, and more. Order in so you can lock in for the games. 30% off your grocery order, only on Uber Eats for a limited time.
Tomorrow morning is knocking. Stock your fridge now. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or a sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel, maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
The narrative of the secondary Palands represents a later and more sophisticated stage of the primeval age. Unlike the primitive resting places of the original Palands, these later domains were characterized by enclosures and mansions, such as the BWT. These structures suggest a shift toward more developed sacred spaces, reflecting the evolving nature of Egyptian sacred architecture. 2 distinct episodes occurred in the same region of the Island of Fury, creating sacred domains under different circumstances. Once confined to the marginal lands, these secondary domains expanded into the mainland of the Paland under the leadership of new divine beings. The transition from the original Palands to the secondary ones marks a pivotal development in Egyptian cosmology. New mythological circumstances, such as conquest and purification, rather than a solely ancestral revival, shaped the foundation of sacred domains in the secondary Palands. These developments illustrate a more complex understanding of sacred space, where historical temples and sacred domains evolved from inherited traditions and new creative acts. As the gods settled into their domains, a definitive era of the primeval age concluded. What followed was a focus on the internal development of these sacred spaces, signifying a shift from the creation of land to the refinement of its divine purpose. This narrative encapsulates the dynamic interplay between death, renewal, and the establishment of the sacred in Egyptian mythology. Therefore, the narrative's primary focus is on the history of the first place in that region. This was primarily the dwelling place of the earth god, described as the Eri-Bt. The text does not explain what his resting place was. Certainly the tradition concerning the DD pillar is foreign to this mythical episode. Moreover, there is no hint of the eventual restoration of this seat. It seems as though the fight, specifically the metamorphosis of the ground into a BWTT, place for crushing, was the means of revivifying its former sacred nature. The gods described everything after they conquered the ancestors' area as an act of purification, tiwarar, of the battlefield. The purification of the battlefield from the remnants of the fight seems logical and natural, allowing the gods' assembly to enter it. We interpret these practical needs as a ritual ceremony that empowers the deities to establish their settlement. However, except for this act, there is no allusion to other rites that were to be completed before the foundation of the enclosure was laid in the first place. Returning to the lands that the Ka gifted to God, specifically when the Falcon declared the vicinity of the perch as their imminent property, reveals a series of actions markedly different from those in the hinterland. We describe the 2 Shebtus as performing yet another act of creation. The allusion refers to a ceremony resembling the IBT, substances, invocation. What follows is a description of a scene strongly resembling the procedure of creating the land itself. The Shebtu is said to have sped to an already known place described in the records as the BWSWIBTTJR-WIM, where the substances of all the lands were endowed with power. The text is again silent about the location of this very center of creation. Speculatively, the creation of all the Palands occurred here. This would mean the Shebtu returned to the center of creation on the original island, where this ultimate act began. This implies that the Egyptians believed a single center from which all phases of Earth's creation emanated, existed in the primeval world. As far as the document tells us, this was the BWHMN, place of the well. The hypothesis received support from the second occurrence of the name BWSWIBTTJ, which incorporates the expression TWRRW, meaning all lands. We suspect this expression includes all the Palands from the first cosmogonical record. On the other hand, the description of this creation episode suggests that another act of creation, possibly on a smaller scale, occurred after the creation of all the Palands. Under these conditions, the magical rite of endowing the substances with power caused the primeval water to recede from the edges of the existing land. However, Atlantis' homeland has yet to emerge. The outcome of this action is described only as WGCBW. The place has been delimited. This suggests a reenactment of the rites of creation previously performed on the edges of the original island, revealing submerged land, However, the BW place described here was distinct. Since the perch was already in existence and stood on the marginal land of the Atlantis homeland, this BW place may refer to the immediate surroundings of the perch. From the account of the Atlantis homeland of Wetcheset, we know the perch was erected in the BWBBT, place of the primeval water. The BW place described here must have lain beneath the water when the Falcon was proclaimed NDM Lord of the Atlantis homeland. Consequently, this ultimate performance of the CWIBTTJ would have served to bring this particular BBBT into a fitting state, fulfilling the Ka's command. The construction of the enclosure necessitated a specific act of creation, which took place only after the establishment of the country's mainland. The origin of the land of Jaba suggests that the magical rite of creation enshrined the DD pillar of the Ka precisely in the BW place. This ultimately resulted in creating a piece of land known as the former home of the Ka, which served as the foundation ground for the Falcon's first enclosure in the pasture. The text does not explicitly state that none brought out the ground of the Ka's home. Instead, it describes this action as delimited. This suggests that, in this particular instance, the magical rite may have dried out the muddy area and restored the former boundary of the Ka's home. The foundation ground was thus believed to restore the exact extent of the former domain. The text says that after solidifying the perch neighborhood, the sages, the builder gods, and the Falcon's crew approached their lord. This brief description suggests the assembly of gods entered the very ground of the perch. The NBP action, fashioning, commenced after a ritual of greeting and adoration. This confirms that only the Falcon's inherited land with the home of the Ka relics was suitable for what followed. Only this part of the land was subject to the WGT-NFR, blessed command, of the Ka, ensuring it was safe for God to establish his settlement there. The term NBP underscores the transition to construction, marking the beginning of the Falcon's first enclosure. Wetcheset and Jeba's accounts record this event, emphasizing that the Palands' most sacred spot enshrined the protective powers necessary for the Falcon's domain. Conceptually, the foundation plot originated later than the land, reenacting the earlier acts of creation. This marked the conclusion of the protracted process of Earth's creation and the beginning of a new phase, the development of the temple. An examination of the Edfu records clearly shows that Egyptian cosmology did not include any ideas about where the first properly built enclosure of the god, and by extension, the temple came from. We have noted some points of convergence in the background of these two theories. Both emphasize that the site of the first enclosure originated from a place of ancestral tradition. It is also evident that Tannon was the chief authority who ensured the site was safe to house God. However, at this point, the method of achieving this protection differs significantly. The soldiers of Tannon, fulfilling their duty of protecting God, appeared on the scene instead of using staffs imbued with magical power. Furthermore, it's important to note that the site, despite its roots in ancestral tradition, falls within the Palands mainland. As mentioned, a new divine being appeared when the victorious company of gods took hold of the site. The sudden arrival of a god, who is not described as a member of the divine family residing on the original island and who did not participate in the fight, makes it apparent that the second Edfu myth might originally have been an alternative interpretation of the origin of the Falcon's sacred places. This tradition clarifies the later creation of the Falcon's secondary sacred places, or reveals the Falcon's original domains situated outside the Ka's realm. The presence of the ancestor heir may support the latter interpretation. At a specific moment, the first myth, in which the Ka plays a significant role, may have connected with this one, explaining the origin of the Falcon's enclosures in the secondary Palands. Tannon and the Falcon occupied these lands, but beyond their original dwelling places, They might have housed remnants of other sacred domains from a past era that necessitated restoration.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
This episode is brought to you by Perfect Bistro Cat Food. Hey guys, today I'm interviewing my cat about his perfect bistro food. Percy, you seem to be a big Perfect Bistro fan. Care to comment? Totally. What do you like about it? You love the high-quality ingredients? And the delicious flavors, of course. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Listen to Percy, guys. Visit perfectbistro.com to try it for your cat.
The revivification and restoration of their sacred nature have involved procedures distinct from those associated with sacred places directly derived from the creation of the earth. The third Edfu record's interpretation of the situation could apply to the genesis of nearly any god's realm. We can infer that this myth underwent further modifications as it spread to regions beyond its origin. Consequently, the narrative of the first solar enclosure adapted this myth to explain the origin of the first domain of other divine beings. If this interpretation is accurate, it's crucial to highlight that the creation of sacred domains for other gods hinged on the presence of Tannon and the Falcon in those locations. This belief likely arose from the transference of traditions between regions. We portray Tannon and the Falcon as traveling through the primeval world. In places where they paused, they prepared the way to create sacred domains that were not exclusively theirs.